It's also important as sociologically a region of a lot of social solidarity, networks of quite resilient social networks, I think, which has been part of the reason why conditions have always been less bad than they might have been given the ecological conditions. And it's also, and I think very importantly, and has been, and I insist on putting this in because it's what my message has been up until this year about this region of the world, it was a laboratory for democracy in the Muslim world, in a context in which we're having intense debates about the future of democracy in North Africa and in other Arab countries following the Arab Spring, and this compatibility, as the question is frequently posed, between Islam and democracy. West Africa had a lot of lessons to teach. I want to just illustrate this with one, oops, did I go back? Illustrate with very quickly run through just a few slides of one event in Niger to make this point that I won't insist on. It's one, as I said, I like to talk about. I would happily come back to, but I'll go quickly. But this is an event in Niger of, well, there it is, June 2007, a meeting of a Muslim Women's Association in a rural town several hours outside of Niamey, the capital, so very much in the rural Sahel, on the theme of Islam, women, peace, and sustainable development. It's at a Sufi saint's shrine, so there's a tomb, and you see the women praying at the tomb because it's a Sufi setting, which we could talk about more. But very importantly, this was an intellectual event, and the woman in the center is the founder of this Muslim Women's Association. Seating to her left behind the microphone was the then First Lady of Niger, the senior wife of President Tanja before he was overthrown, with other both religious and political figures. The event draws women from across West Africa, across Niger and across West Africa, huge numbers of women. The men are there as well, partly to receive the delegation, but it was very much a woman's event. And it was the political figures were there. That's the prefect and the governor of the region, obviously, in their finest and in Niger. A heavily mediatized event which was covered around the world and broadcast. It was on the net and in unlikely places. I heard people that they had followed this event, etc. But most importantly, it was an event to discuss these issues of Islam, women, peace, sustainable development in a rural Nigerian setting. And audience members were invited to speak up and participate, and many did so throughout, and it continued for several days. But very importantly for me, they had, in addition to the Sufi Women's Organization present there, had actually invited women with different points of view. Women representing Islamist reformist associations, you could call them Salafist or fundamentalist. One of them calls herself Salafist. And they were invited to speak and say, what do you think about this, right? And here's one, and there's another woman. My point in this, and again, this is something we could embellish at great length, but that this was part also of the important reality of the Sahel. There were these intense debates and discussions taking place about the role, about how to try to think about establishing a democracy under conditions of extraordinary material shortage and in a Muslim context. And I think in many ways, the region actually had a lot of events from elsewhere in the Muslim world, and yet it was sort of off the radar. So that's to situate a little bit the human context for you and to insist that there was some good news underlying what we're going to be hearing about here. In fact, the Sahel was, until not so long ago, not much of a priority, not much on the radar, and not many people paying much attention to it. Very different from today. What happened? How did we get here? Let's go back to our map.